It's not quite so dominant as people have been saying. I have enjoyed reasonable matchups on ladder. Like, I have beaten the Warlock as the Priest, but then the rest of the matchups, I don't know. I just feel like the early game is not strong enough to keep up with most of the decks because there's very few like pure aggro decks against which Drain Soul and all of the other healing effects can outlast. The aggro decks are more like tempo decks. They're mid-range decks with this Warrior, the Rogue as well, that it's very difficult for the Warlock to overcome. But who knows? I won't be too miserable about it before things even begin because it's very possible for DawN to take the win here.
It's fair to say, and the reason why people consider Warlock generally to be favored against Priest is because of Ticketus, which can just fatigue the Priest, delete cards in their deck. When I was playing this matchup from the Warlock perspective against Warrior, I had no opportunities to play Ticketus. I just did not have time, let alone get it corrupted and then play it. I don't know if the pan out will be much different here for DawN, but already you're seeing his keep of 2 reactive spells and then the Talon for drawing a guaranteed Yasharaj at the top, or if you get it too early, it gets you Alexstrasza. Just good outcomes almost all around. And I find that the Warlock hardly ever just wins by straight up answering all of the threats from the Warrior. Warrior tends to actually have to face tank quite a bit of damage clearing, say things like your Void Drinker here. So it gets to a point where Warlock can threaten either just getting over the line with Jirax's hero powers or Alexstrasza or even just a big Yasharaj turn. So I don't mind this keep for DawN, which is a bit reactive when we're in this primary deck especially.
That's right. I mean, it is a bit reactive, but it opens up the potential for a big swing later on. Like, even though turn 10 is a long way away, with Talon cascading Disaster and obviously that drawing him the charge from the deck, there's a very good chance he'll be able to get a huge swing turn once turn 10 or even turn 9 potentially with the coin does roll around. So it's got most of the bases covered that you're looking to hit as Warlock with this starting hand.
Indeed. Armor Vendor, like I said, not very relevant whatsoever in this matchup, but thankfully for DawN, Hi3 doesn't have something like the immediate Warmaul challenger into Shield of Honor, which he is running 1 copy of in the primary to punish there being a minion on board. As for Hi3, I'm pretty sure the Warrior perspective on this is be as greedy as you can with the conditioning.
Which, I mean, he is doing, not really through much of a choice of his own, because he hasn't really had anything to play up until this point. And I do like saving the Playmaker here. Again, when you're looking at both the Drain Soul and the Soul Shear as well, there's a lot of ways to deal 3 damage to a minion, so you want to get a little bit more value out of it than just playing it on turn 3.
I think an easy Scorpid pick. That's the only playable card here. The other 2 were really not getting much done for DawN. The Soul Rend, he probably won't want to use that until it's absolutely necessary, but it's nice to have an insurance of extra removal in your back pocket.
And already we're seeing the ramifications of a pretty early but very important choice for DawN, because he didn't go Coin Scorpid on turn 2, which was probably correct. The benefit of getting it down so early, however, was that it comes online before the Sword Eater does, and that is really the main way that Warrior is trying to deal with the Scorpids, because outside of that, Scorpids are a nightmare for this Rush Warrior to deal with if it's not exactly a weapon to kill them off.
Right, it is the one minion that you don't want to rush into with a value trade for Warrior. But I'd still think it's fine for DawN because it means the Talon comes online this turn. Yes, it gets immediately dealt with by the 2/5 plus the weapon swing, but it has so many ramifications, right? It cycles you through your deck. Yes, it's not a playable card immediately, but like you remove that from your deck so you get higher chances of drawing into better removal. And it also upgrades the Cascading Horror 1 time, which is such an important card in the matchup.
Kind of an interesting choice there. I guess the Watley is probably better because it develops a card and draws, but I was, in a way, looking at the cutting class, athletic studies, and then conditioning as well, because you would have filled up your hand, drawn a card, and then got the immediate buff with conditioning instead of having to play it a turn later. But this does get a 3/5 in play immediately, which is, again, that little bit more valuable just to keep a constant small amount of pressure against the Warlock.
It is true. I think both those lines were greedy, so I think both of them are the way you play this matchup. I'm not sure which is necessarily better, but I do like the idea of getting a minion on board. This is also not a Hysteria-prone board state, so good for Hi3. He can still get the cheapened cutting class later after he plays the second Sword Eater, which could very much be the play next turn, just conditioning into Sword Eater.
And for DawN here, it's perfectly reasonable plays coming in turn after turn. If there's not a big threat coming down from Hi3 next turn, I honestly wouldn't be at all surprised to see the Tempo Ticketus just to get something in play.
Yeah, I think it still might be the play, even though there will be a decent-sized strat coming down. I am looking at conditioning Sword Eater here, just to load up for cheapened cutting class next turn. And take note, DawN's primary deck is not running Siphon Soul, so actually singular big minions present something of a dilemma for DawN, where he doesn't want a Cascading Horror just one minion, if possible, and it's also not Hysteria-prone.
That's a very good point. Does then obviously lead up as well into like Playmaker plus the Bumper Car plus Crab Rider potentially as well. Once they're all buffed up, that could get some very threatening minions online.
Hi3 taking his time to consider his options, because there's a lot of ways to approach this with the singular big minion still in mind. Oh, Run Thack is so tempting, and you can immediately Shield of Honor it. Woo!
It's pretty sick.
But this conditioning's gotta be good enough, right?
Lord Eater on this time, really interesting.
So he did end up with a Sword Eater, which I was advocating just to get the cutting class discount, but doesn't condition, which kind of makes me wonder, is he trying to save this for 10 mana? That feels way too late.
I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's like he wanted to get the Crab Rider online on this turn to get Shield of Honor for next turn, because that's a huge swing of burst. I don't necessarily agree that this was the way to do it, because you could have just tried to go conditioning then the Crab Rider as well if you really wanted to go about it that way.
And for DawN now, he has to start asking questions about which removal am I okay with throwing away here. Straight up, this looks like, at first glance, a Cascading Horror turn, but you can see here, DawN is actually going to use the Soul Rend because he doesn't feel that there's too high a risk of burning anything super significant. I agree with that. He already has Yasharj and Jiraxxus in hand, and those are the cards that allow you to push for counter-lethal instead of just trying to fatigue the warrior. And this Cascading Horror probably gets even more utility once the conditioning start getting online.
So how much are we looking at here at setup versus tempo? Because obviously there are ways that you can go for maximum greed, again, withdraw, then conditioning, then you maybe play one minion. Or you could go for conditioning Playmaker Bumper Card. Do you want to fit the Parade Leader in there first as well to get plus attack?
There's so many ways to go about it. I said maximum greed, but I think that might be too slow at this point, because it's getting to a point where DawN could play a Ticketus here. Militia, not scary, because no soul fragments in the deck so far, but the point stands. 8-8 on board with nothing on your side is not where you want to be as Hi3, so he is going to play one conditioning here, and he goes for that play you were suggesting that I honestly didn't think was that likely, because there's a chance he overdraws now. 4 of the 1/1s returning to hand after this.
That's true. I guess if that does happen, unless it's like exactly Troublemaker, you're kind of happy with having a handful of 1/1s that you can then buff with Run Thack, buff with the Parade Leader. Again, it just forces answer after answer from DawN, which he can't have all of.
True. And it's also got to be, if it's a one-card answer, it has to be the fully upgraded Cascading, which is just not a possibility. DawN has only played one card higher than 4 mana thus far, the Talon. And so it would have to be a 2-card combination to get rid of everything, which DawN actually has. Soul Shear plus Cascading if he wants to take it. Or just Hysteria. That looks pretty clean too.
So if you're going for the Hysteria, how are you filling out the rest of your mana on this turn? Like, Free Admission is interesting and could hit some insanely good outcomes if you get, like, I don't know, Rustwix or one of the other demons that sound okay. Or you could just go Scorpid, but it does just get chomped up by the axe, I suppose.
I don't think Rustwix is a demon, nor is it in the primary, but it can get Void Drinker and I guess Spirit Jailer? Yeah, because Ticketus is already in hand. That's already the big one.
Yeah. That Shadow Council, Gia, I have my eyes on it, as it is actually exactly Troublemaker that is burned off the top. So for Hi3, the punish of his line, there it is. That's disastrous.
It truly is. And DawN decided to fill out the rest of his mana by playing the Scorpid, which I'm not necessarily a fan of because the weapon can immediately kill it. But I don't even know if Hi3 necessarily wants to use the weapon because how likely is he to have a rush target for the Runthak next turn? But then it's like a pretty negative tempo if you just Runthak to get the buff and leave nothing online.
I kind of like just going for Parade Leader and then draw 2 cards and then like play maybe 2-3 of your Darkmoon Riders as well. Like, it's not the end of the world if you just throw them all out. You don't have to buff specifically these minions with Runthak.
Yeah, I agree. And just +1/+1 is not very relevant as well. So I like the Parade Leader line. The best response for that, I believe, would be School Spirits, but DawN did burn one off of the, I forget the name of the AoE that he generated.
The Soul Rend, yeah. Here for a good time. And funnily enough, actually, here, Gia, for DawN, the Jiraxxus buff into a hero card, in a way, is actually a nerf, because it would have been playable here for 8 mana, because it used to be a demon, whereas now it's only a 9.
You're right.
Which is
okay, I concede you and Raven have greater demon knowledge than I, because Rustvix is indeed a demon. Free admission to start, sure. Oh, now he's got to be thinking about juicing up these soul shears for the militia.
Yeah, like I think the Cascading Disaster to get rid of Rustvix is... Oh, sorry, not Rustvix. The Runthak is just too important. But then following up with Spirit Jailer, I mean, maybe even next turn so you have less chance of drawing the Soul Fragments is the way to go.
Sure. Yeah, the Jailer does pretty much nothing on board like we've discussed over and over. I like the hold here. Not necessarily sure I agree with the draw of Cascading Free Admission to begin the turn at all, because it kind of meant that DawN had to use the better Cascading Horror instead of, say, just going like Soul Shear.
That's true, yeah.
Oh, another Runthak off the top. That's huge.
That is big.
That means these Darkmoon Riders are now of a size where just a School Spirits cannot deal with them.
Okay, I think that is correct ordering on the Rakara. It looked weird at first, but obviously now he gets +1/+1 on the Rakara, which is probably more important because, again, it is that 3 damage breakpoint that you always talk about.
But DawN gets a very impactful Militia here. 3 of these little... I don't even know what these tokens are called. Going to clear up everything, and he gets his own board presence as well. But the Samuro can make quick work of that.
Oh, now things are getting interesting with Alexstrasza in hand, and obviously ETC now in hand, with a bunch of rush cards as well. We're getting close. There's some real high damage burst combos that can come from Hi3.
Yeah. It's not that high, if I'm going to be honest. If it's ETC plus 3 Darkmoons, it's like 6, right? I mean, assuming nothing else sticks on board. So if something does, sure, it's a lot. But for sure, I agree with Hi3's Samuro here to deal with the entire board while using the least amount of resources. But DawN now can turn on the pressure, Void Drinker plus Cascading Disaster, or even just Ticketus Cascading.
It's gotta be Ticketus.
Yeah,
you can go Ticketus this turn, Ticketus next turn with the Yashaj as well, now that it's corrupted. And just going Yashaj double Cascading Disaster to destroy 5 minions, I think that would be.
Yeah.
It's looking good for DawN. It's looking very good.
This is the first Ticketus we've seen in all of APAC GM so far. Like, Warlock has just not been very brought, and I think the one time Lambi brought it last week, it got banned. But it does have its niche for sure. Hi3 just pointing face, alright.
Really?
I mean, I was talking about how the burst might not be enough, but it feels like it might be Hi3's only out here. Plus, DawN won't always have a minion that you can even rush into.
True.
So by leaving the Ticketus up, you kind of present DawN with the dilemma of, if you want to have a good board presence, then I can have my Darkmoon Rider targets.
I mean, if we get into specific number breakpoints as well, though, I mean, as you said, it's not that much damage yet. I was kind of overemphasizing how much burst this is, even with the extra 3 from the weapon. Like, we know that DawN can deal with this board, and he will. I think Yashaj is absolutely the play on this turn.
One Cascading Horror can deal with all that, and he gets so much value back. From 16, the really only thing you need to be scared of is ETC combos, because he had already seen the Alexstrasza.
Yeah.
Troublemaker, when you have 2 minions on board, probably not going to be too scared, especially since Hi3 overdrew 1, right? And
I mean, 3 minions on board, right? Because you're going to replay Ticketus as well.
Oh,
just insane.
this is all too much. So really, the only out for Hi3 is to have like a bumper card top deck here. Has he even? I think he's played both as well.
I think he played them both. Yeah, Playmaker was really the out for him there, wasn't it?
And even if he did hit Playmaker, I believe that would just be 15 with the weapon. Yeah, one off. DawN was just spending that turn considering, and Dark Moon Rabbit, not bad.
Okay, that's pretty good. If you're going to have any chance, that is it. You have to do it, or you're dead.
Absolutely.
He can't Kargath Rush. He has no way to draw it again. Yeah, no.
I'm sorry, it is not Claw Machine in any universe. But yeah, we can see very much that DawN has his choice of follow-up even after this board gets dealt with.
He just found the time to play Ticketus. As soon as you do, it's GG.
And I don't think that is a super difficult thing to achieve in the primary, at least.
Yeah.
In the tertiary matchup is when things start to get dicey. I think Warrior was not only a good bring for this week because of the matchup spread, but because of how much it can benefit from the sideboards compared to a lot of other decks. You can just pack so much greed into the Warrior by playing Rattlegore and Karin and Terran Gorfiend and pairing the Terran with any of those Death Rattles.
I just don't think it matters what you go for here. You can go Jiraxa Strongman, you can go Circus Amalgam plus the Void Drinker plus Spirit Jailer as well if you want to.
Yeah, DawN
Probably
just doing his due diligence.
Yeah.
His due diligence of checking and counter-checking what's left in Hi3's hand. He should have full information. None of these cards were generated by this point. And so what is the maximum damage that Hi3 can output? And he will quickly come to the conclusion that it is far from enough, especially when he has Cascading Horror and Soul Shear to deal with any minions that stick after a turn of being played.
That's right, it is going to get there this time, but Gia, as you were saying, DawN does have a deck he can switch to, which does help him somewhat, I think. But the real trump card here, or the real X factor, is for Hi3, the deck that he can switch to with Robes of Protection. He's got, what even else alongside there? Terran, Cairn, Rattlegore, huge death rattles, very difficult for Warlock to deal with. And I think it may just be too much.
Gonna play out everything here, which is, you know, more than I thought it would be, but I think DawN should still have plenty to deal with this. The Cascading can be upgraded by playing Strongman, and he actually just has the Void Drinker, and he can fit in
it's already
Cascading.
full,
Yeah. Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh.
I'm just creating problems where they don't exist for DawN, because he's in that good of a spot.
There it is. A valiant effort for Hi3 in the end, but DawN getting the win. And that is crucial for him, I think, to have a chance in this series, because now he has 2 goes at taking down the secondary deck from Hi3. I would say at this point he is probably still favored. I don't think it's that disastrous of a matchup against the Rattlegore, the Ken. Again, the Owl, the Siphon Soul do allow him some counterplay against these big death rattles, but it feels like it's significantly below 50% in terms of individual game win rate.
It is true. I also think that Hi3 maybe could have tightened up a little bit playing around Hysteria, because the turn where it was Playmaker, was it? And then 2 bumper cars. This one was a bit of a disaster, I would say. It gave DawN a very easy way to answer that and then just end with the Scorpid on board. And a lot of the troubles I had playing as Warlock versus Warrior were against them very, very consciously playing around Hysteria and Cascading Horror.
In the end, though, as hard as the rabbit fought, it was for Hi3 to take the win. And so are we looking at any significant change up in the game plan for either player? Do you think that because Hi3 has all these extra threats, he's allowed to play less greedy in a way because his deck is inherently so much more greedy that he can just curve out his threats? And do you think DawN will be less on the removal plan, more on the aggro plan, or is it just game on in the same way for both our players?
I think it's largely the same as in the primary, because it's a balance, right? While Hi3 has more threats in his deck, DawN has also added more removal and removed very useless cards such as the Armor Bender. So I think it balances out. It's just that the impact of what Hi3 has added, in my opinion, generally has a bigger effect on the outcome of the matchup because the Rattle Guard it just requires such a specific combination of cards to answer cleanly, and if it's not there exactly on time, you're clocking for 9, at which point an ETC combo can probably get over the line. Wow, DawN keeps Spirit Jailer, which I honestly feel like it's not very good in this matchup.
Yeah.
He does get to tap, and to be fair, there's nothing that you would play on 1 mana if not that, but it feels a bit counterintuitive because you play it early, you have a higher chance of getting the fragments online, and you don't want to immediately draw them because you want them for the Militia.
Yeah, it does allow you to kill Crab Rider at the start in combination with Soulshare, which otherwise... Again, there is the copy of Shield of Honor in the deck, so Crab Riders being coined out is pretty annoying, and that is exactly what we see here. But I do agree, overall, I think it's a little pessimistic of a keep.
Yeah, this is the one situation where you do want the Spirit Jailer. Yeah. I think Hi3 actually removed the Shield of Honor in his secondary.
Oh, right, you are. My mistake.
Which is interesting because I feel that's a bit of a greedy card that you also like to have, but maybe not greedy enough. Additional run thack, though, that is the greed that you want to see, I think.
Yeah, it's got to be, right? Crab Rider with Rakara is nice. That has some very cute synergy, but it's not quite good enough.
Yeah. Just going to get the Crab Rider down right now, and doesn't hit the Spirit Jailer, which I think is very smart. It plays around the School Spirits as a breakpoint, and because he's going to Rakara next turn very likely, he can still get rid of the Spirit Jailer. If you're DawN, I think any chance to put damage on this is a welcome sight without having to face tank it, because he's not running Shield of Honor, so I would just bump into it.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I am kind of confused on from Hi3's side is players that keep playing Athletic Studies that slots into their mana play on turn 2, because obviously he could have just played Crab Rider and saved the Athletic Studies, because on this turn specifically, like, yes, it allows you to plan your future turns a bit better, but are you really going to find anything specifically better than Crab Rider on turn 2? Like, it's a premier rush 2-drop.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if he had hit like another Rakara, but then you would still have the curve online with the original Rakara, so I agree it is a bit baffling.
Well, it works out very nicely with Rakara online. The Hysteria can clear off, obviously, the Rakara itself, but does little to deal with the Crab Rider, which honestly is the real problem right now.
This is the exact shape of board that Warlock struggles with, and I agree, DawN needs to respect the Rakara. It is too scary to leave her up on board.
Correct minion targeted as well, DawN. I have made that mistake myself before.
Well, this is an awkward turn for Hi3, not gonna lie. The Robes of Protection doesn't feel especially good here because, one, a Hysteria did just get used, and two, it doesn't protect the Murloc from School Spirits, for example.
Yeah.
But other than that, it would be throwing Playmaker, which I feel is pretty valuable as well.
It is. but it might survive, right? You've seen a fair bit already that implies they don't necessarily have those 3 damage removals, because if there was just a Soul Shear or a Siphon Soul, not a Siphon Soul, sorry, a Drain Soul, he could have just targeted the Rakara itself and saved the Hysteria instead. So I think there's a reasonable chance that this Playmaker actually sticks about for a turn.
Good point. And it is creating this dilemma for Warlock where any control deck really against Rush Warrior, where against almost any other aggro deck, you can kind of treat your taunt minions as removal in a way because they need to smash their head into it to get through. But against Rush Warrior, almost all the minions can deal with the taunt minions from hand, plus the weapon will be online. So it feels like DawN has to go for School Spirits here, and the mana expenditure looks very bad from that point onward. Maybe it's still just Talon to upgrade the Cascading, or even Siphon Soul?
Kind of where I'm looking. Like, again, upgrading the Cascading Disaster is a big deal. It's a turn before the weapon comes through. Like, it's pretty specific plays they have to actually effectively deal with the Divine Shield.
The Claw Machine! It's so good here.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Like, probably not the play this turn. I like the look of Runtak.
I don't think you can play it this turn, but for next turn, yeah, you need the card draw, for sure.
True.
Oh, pretty disgusting.
The double buffs. Oh, you gotta feel for DawN. He had to play the Talon to upgrade the Cascading, but what's really cascading now is his problems.
Indeed. Do you just go for Cascading and try and hit Runtak Crab Rider? Oh. It feels
Even
awful.
if you tap and get the Hysteria, it's not dealing with this board. There's 3 minions, which all kill each other upon 1 hit.
You just go Siphon Soul Crab Rider, and then you are alive most of the time, right?
Alive!
ETC. Like, I'm not saying it's great, but nothing feels too good here.
Yeah. Obviously, playing Siphon would then upgrade both of your Cascading Horrors. I just don't think he can take the risk, though. Tapping is also brave, but fair enough. DawN's hand does not get there. He gets a good outcome, though. Okay. 2 off being dead.
It's a big Claw Machine that summons another one here, drawing 2 minions from the deck. That is the nuttiest Claw Machine I think I have ever seen, and it didn't even rush.
And DawN is simply dead here. He cannot deal with this board and heal out of range of the weapon. And that is going to be a very, very quick game too. Honestly, I thought this would go out a little bit longer because the Warlock does have tools in this tertiary to fight back, but it just did not play out fast enough against the early Crab Rider.
Can he go School Spirits, tap, draw 1,000,000 Soul Fragments, and then get Drain Soul as well? I think there are niche outs for him to survive the turn, at least.
Can't tap.
Oh no, yeah, you're right. Yeah, maybe not.
A valiant effort.
Well, he would have found lethal that way. I'm not saying who he would have lethaled, but he did find it, so I'm not wrong.
Yep. Anyway, game 3. It's obviously going to be the same decks for both players, right? And from DawN, I would really like to see him mull for higher impact cards. The Spirit Jailer we saw damaged a Crab Rider, but not only is that a very niche situation, but if they're playing a Crab Rider on 1, if it's not on 2, if it's not exactly Rakara, it's not that much of a threat. It is hitting for 2 damage per turn.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, and it was just too much right out the gate. The Crab Rider's looking absolutely insane there. Like, often they're just not that strong, but when you see the combo with Rakara, it's clearly just too much for Warlock to deal with, because their early spells, yes, that 3 damage removal is strong, and we saw that they're almost getting over the finish line, but when you factor in all the buffs that Warrior can do, the removal is just not quite powerful enough. So once again, we didn't even get to see any of the real tech cards coming into play there for Hi3. None of the Cairn, Rattlegore, even Robes of Protection, which was drawn, didn't do anything. He just played his cards on curve and Warlock crumbled.
It's true. I mean, The only real difference here was the Robes of Protection, which didn't even get online. It just goes to show that Rakara is such a powerhouse. It required DawN to spend an inefficient Hysteria just to make sure that she couldn't get the immediate buffs going. So given that Rakara is a possible card to be generated, I'm starting to understand why players are so willing to throw out their athletic studies, even though you could bank the mana in a different way, like Druids would with nature studies, for example.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I in that particular instance, he already had Rakara in hand. Like, I do still have my questions, because I just think if you have a play that can't be beaten on turn 2, like, unless you want to play Bumper Car instead, arguably, I just think you save the athletic studies, because you can bank the mana for Claw Machine or Run Thack, or one of the more expensive rush minions later on. Does mean that we're equalized at 1 game apiece, however, despite what that graphic may try to tell you. And now it all comes down to this, because again, it is the best of 3. And so for DawN, are we looking at free admission being kept for card draw Void Drinker to try and get a big threat online? I feel like the removal plan is just not really getting there at the moment.
I do like the removal and free admission. The Void Drinker can be very powerful, but it does require you to get soul fragments online, and I feel that the points where it's powerful are hard to set up because you'll have to be removing things in the first place, because when you play the Void Drinker, they very likely have minions, and then they can play 1 or 2 rushes to get rid of that, and then the rest that was already on board can go face. So for DawN, I think this is a very reasonable start. Get rid of the threats 1 for 1 as you would deal with the primary deck, and hopefully you hit the additional removal pieces at the time when Hi3 is playing his additional threats. But we're already kind of seeing from Hi3 that the techs, while good in theory, if you draw them all together but none of the usual threats in the deck, it can get pretty bad.
I think I'm looking at Tent Trasher here, most likely. Like, Warsong Outrider is obviously full mana cheaper. But there's a reasonable chance with like Murloc in your deck that you can draw one of those or generate one of them to get it a little bit cheaper right now.
Runthak has always been impactful in this matchup. Problem is DawN has not played a minion. Although just the 3/6 stat line is something to be afraid of from DawN's perspective, even if it doesn't immediately get the attack. He doesn't necessarily want to coin Siphon Soul on that if it were even in hand.
Yeah, I do like that he's taking some consideration there, because obviously there's Kargath is just a strong card. Kargath Prime would be very powerful. And then there is some synergy with Broom and Terran Gorfiend to try and rush in and immediately kill it, or rush the minions that come out of it afterwards. But Runthak is Runthak. It's in the deck. It's ludicrously powerful. And look at what it can do in the next few turns. This is stupid.
Although, I did talk about how it's hard to set up a turn where Void Drinker is actually effective. This might be that. Coin Void Drinker into Void Drinker. That is the check for Hi3's current hand, where it does have rush minions, but not that much to benefit with Rakara.
I mean, that's why I wanted him to see him keep the Void Drinker in the starting hand. Like, I think his plan of just going for a removal is demonstrably not consistent enough, whereas if he gets a single Soul Fragment Shuffler, Coin Void Drinker could be insane.
Okay, Hi3 going for Rakara plus Robes here. This is a pretty cool play. He knows that Cascading cannot have been upgraded by this point. Nothing expensive played yet. And so he is most of the time safe. DawN goes for the immediate Void Drinker, and now Hi3 plays, is it Outrider here?
Yeah, just sack the Rakara. I don't love it.
Not great.
But this is the power of being proactive. This is what I was looking for from DawN. 7-8 into 7-8 with Pawn. It's Earth Elementals with no overload. It's insane. And Warrior struggles with this, with its high attack minions on the other side. You can't rush Overlord Runthak into this. That's awful.
I mean, the way this panned out, it obviously looks great. The concern is that I think Warrior's draw is usually not that slow, where they don't do anything after the first parade leader. Certainly, though, being able to chain these is going to make DawN's decision points very simple here. He just needs to keep playing more minions. If they couldn't deal with the 7-8, how are they going to deal with the 7-5 plus Talon plus Spirit Jailer? He has Militia next turn as well. Even if it just summons 2, I believe, it could just lock out the game.
Imagine keeping removal. Imagine calling this Control Warlock. This is mid-range tempo Warlock. It's one of the reasons why I like Void Drinker in the deck. Like a lot of decks right now are just vulnerable to sticking one big heffin minion on the board. And quite clearly, Warrior is one of those decks that is supremely vulnerable.
Hi3 not completely out of it yet, though. This could be a run-thack turn into the best possible curve. Troublemaker into Rattlegore. But you're right, the Void Drinker is going to make it such that he might not have the time, to the point where Hi3 is going to sack his 2 minions. And I think this is absolutely correct. You both deny DawN the cycle from the Talon and remove the most damage on board.
And I think even though it's only 2 soul fragments, absolutely, it's still just Militia on this turn. You keep pressing the advantage, and it is the last thing that Hi3 wanted to see.
This is just such an unusual pan out, because I feel it's very likely the Warlock that doesn't have the time to play their Void Drinker / their Ticketus. But here it's becoming such that Hi3 might not have the time to play his Rattlegore. And there's already an Owl in hand to deal with it.
I mean, are you ever just cascading Disaster here? Like,
yeah, it looks
this minion's
great, right?
annoying. I know it's massively upgraded, but like, you just get rid of that. Oh, sure,
okay.
Better.
If you tap into Siphon, sure, but I was absolutely on board for Cascading Disaster. Like, Hi3, he's clearly shown that he cannot put many minions on board all at once. And so DawN is just clocking away at 9 per turn, and that is very much enough to get there. This will allow him to play a taunt with the Sword Eater.
Yeah. It's a lot less stats than Rattlegore that's been buffed up. Like, I get that Silence can deal with it there, but...
Well, the thing is, even if it's not Silence, if DawN just ignores the Rattlegore that turn, plays 2 more minions, Hi3's very likely just dead.
I guess, yeah, that's a good point. Alex Straza can help you with that a little bit, at least.
Although, it also looks like Hi3 is just dead, even if DawN floats 5 mana this turn. But it will just be, of course, Jiraxis here. 3/3 plus weapon can take down the Watley. It's so perfect.
Yeah, Strongman as well. Both Cascading Disasters thoroughly juiced up now.
Yeah, imagine trading. I love it from DawN. He just pushes the advantage, realizes there is no way he can die from 34, and even if Hi3 had some miracle playmaker turn to clear this entire board and get ahead at the end of it, DawN just has Twisting Nether and Button.
There are some really powerful plays on this turn, though, with Playmaker bumper car conditioning. I would have to imagine this is a full board clear for Hi3.
If he had time, he could Terran it all too, but there is simply no time.
It's what he's been setting up for a while, and very possibly what the Watley entirely was for on the previous turn. Obviously, as you said, in addition to the taunt, but this is the play that needed to happen for Hi3. Finally, he is back ahead on board.
Oh, but what a fleeting advantage it is. DawN with the double Twisting Nethers in the tertiary. It couldn't be simpler. 8 mana, clear the board. 2 mana, have a 6/6. 0 mana, swing face for 3.
Oh yeah, with Ticketus. Like, I was going to say you might go Cascading Disasters to get them in the pool for your charge, so that you can go your charge Strongman Cascading again next turn. But I think now that you can corrupt the Ticketus with Twisting this turn, then go Cascading plus Ticketus, then your charge, like, it's so clean. Everything just plays itself from here, and as you said, you clear, you develop, you win.
And with Specialist, I've very often fallen into the trap because I have competed in Masters Tours where Specialist was the format where I put on all these cards that look good in theory in certain matchups, doesn't always pan out in practice. Not to say that this was not a good theory from Hi3. I think this was a below average outcome for his early draws. But it goes to show that sometimes you cannot just put every card that looks good in the deck without putting in some time to test it, because a lot of the time, if your opponent is also teching, they can put push on your weak spots that show when you add a lot of expensive cards into the deck.
Ticketus, cascading, yeah, sign me up to all of the above.
It is just a ticking time bomb. DawN's weapon outpaces Hi3's hero power, not even accounting for the board advantage that DawN will just never lose from this point.
Got to be feeling pretty good, even with ETC in hand, like with Playmaker gone. Now I don't even see an out that way. Hi3 doesn't see the out either, and he throws it down. DawN finally looking like he might be getting a start to something here in Grandmasters. It's not insane yet, he's only through to the top 8, but it is the potential for him to claw his way back, because after 2 weeks without a single win, he's finally through to the top 8, playing on Saturday. And this Warlock, honestly, despite having a rough game at the start, when it starts doing its powerful things, curving out with strong minions, it's just really powerful.
It is cascading in the same way as the cards it plays, because once you get the board advantage as Warlock, their removal becomes so painful on the other side, because it often takes just 1 or 2 cards to deal with 2 to 3 minions on the other side. That's just going to be good tempo when you do the math, and that means every minion that Warlock had prior to even removing is just going to keep hitting you in the head. And as it turned out for Hi3, not having hit the early conditioning into this type of removal turn that he had meant that it was just too late. And I'm happy to see DawN move forward, because I think he has